I'm Donna from Riverside Beads, and today I'm going to show you how to make an 8 braid beaded Kumihimo bracelet. This is a project from my book, A Beginner's Guide to Kumihimo. So let's get started and have a look at the tools and materials that you'll need to make this project. If you've not made a braided Kumihimo or seen a basic Kumihimo braid done before, you can refer to my previous video, which will show you how to do an 8 braid and all of the basic techniques you'll need to get started. So on this video, I'll assume that you know how to set up your project, and I'll show you the beaded part of the Kumihimo. So here's the basic tools that you will need to get started with your beaded Kumihimo. So I've got my Kumihimo disc. I keep a separate one for my beaded projects. I have my S-lon. This is my bit that I've pre-cut, and here's your S-lon on your roll. I also use a 0.6 macrame cord, although it's slightly thicker than S-lon. So good preparation of your ends is crucial for that. Good sharp pair of embroidery scissors. Some nail varnish to stiffen the ends of each of the cords, and I'm using my size 8 Preciosa seed beads for this project. This little gadget here is a bobbin. Now the bobbins are really useful for popping the surplus cord of a project on. So you pop them open, wind the cord around them and pop them back together. But I'll show you that when we've got all the beads loaded. So to prepare your cord ready to add your beads onto, take a sharp pair of scissors and cut it at an angle. This will give you a nice fine point on your cord ready to pick up your beads. I also prepared it by adding nail varnish onto all of the ends. So once you've done your lengths and prepared them on your disc, take a spare piece of paper or plastic or something, and just the nail varnish, just make sure the brush isn't sort of dripping off of it, but there's plenty on there. I coat it over the cord, and then what I do is tend to turn the cord round so you're coating the other side of the cord as well. And just make sure it's covered plenty, but not making it any thicker. And when that's completely dry, that will be completely stiff for you to be able to add your beads onto. So I've pre-prepared the cord on these, and these have already been nail varnished. They've already been cut at the angle and nail varnished, which gives you a nice sort of point. So it's like a needle picking up the beads then. That makes the beaded process a whole lot easier. I've also braided the section following our braided instructions here, just to create a small, about 5mm end in there. And that'll be the bit that you'll glue your end cap onto when we've finished. So that's all ready to go now. So the next part of the process will be to add the beads on. Now again, if we follow the stripe process that I showed you in our beginner's bracelet, it follows the same with beads. So if I wanted the beads to go in a stripe of the teal and a stripe of the silver, I would load the teal beads onto these two cords and these two cords, and the silver on these two and these two. Now with the preparation that I've done already on the end of the cords, I pick the beads up straight from the mat with the nice firm end of the S-lon. And I'll thread these beads on until I've got a few on each strand. So I've got the beads loaded onto my Kumihimo. I do sometimes work with them on the top of my disc here, but I know a lot of people find it easier to have them around the bobbins. So if you open your bobbin up, take your cord, thread it around the bobbin. Now I will just say, if you've taken the time to prepare the ends, don't have them inside the bobbin, and then they'll be ready if you want to add some more beads on. If you wind them in here, I find it softens the nail varnish a little, and then it can be difficult. So as I wind that round, I've actually left that tail out, which will keep that nice and firm, ready for when I need it. So what I then do is drop those beads off of that strand down on top of the bobbin. If there's more, you can wind them in the bobbin as well, but if it's just a few like this, you can just pop them down on top of the bobbin. So I'll carry on doing that and adding the bobbins on each strand, ready, and then we'll be able to do our beading. So I've preloaded all my beads on, popped all my bobbins on, and dropped the beads down onto those. As I say, you can work with them on the top, which I often do when I do my project, but it'll be easier to show you like this. So as I now take my top right cord down to my bottom right, which will be going down to there, so the process of braiding will be the same, but we will add a bead as we go. So I'm dropping one bead, I'm allowing that to drop in, and I'm popping it under the cord that crosses. So that's going under there, and then I pop that cord down to the bottom right. Then I take the top left cord and I drop one bead under that cord you're crossing. and then I pop that cord up to the top left there. Then I quarter turn and I repeat again. So each time for this project that I'm bringing my right cord to my right, I'm popping a bead under that cord it's crossing, and then my left cord up to my left, and a bead goes down and under that cord that it's crossing and in place, quarter turn. So your process of right to right and left to left is the same, but each time you're doing it, you're popping a bead in place before you put your cord in its final position. Okay, I finished the beads that I'd preloaded that time. Now you can preload all your beads and pop them around your bobbins if you prefer it that way, whatever you fancy doing. So what I always do is I leave my top right down to my bottom right. So I leave my cord down there when I'm ready to do something else. And then I know that when I come back to it, I'm on my bottom left, ready to go up there. So as I go to take that one, I realised I've run out of beads on that. Now you can, before you run out of beads, you can leave one on there so you know which colour. I know with this one that this is my teal colour, and that it was quite a simple stripe where the two colours went on those 4 cords and the other colours on those 4 cords. So I pop open my bobbin, undo that, and then thread my colour onto there. So I'm taking my teal beads and I'll perhaps pop another 10 beads onto my cord, and then you wind that back around the bobbin. Now if you do prefer to just load them all up first time, that's absolutely fine. Depends what how I'm feeling, and if I'm just testing a little bit of a colour pattern to see what it looks like, or whether I'm making a whole design and I know what I want to do with it. So I shall get these all threaded on, and let me show you in the meantime, just pop that in place so I don't forget where it goes. Let me show you in the meantime how it's looking underneath. So this is what I've completed so far. So that shows you how we've got the stripe of the teal from the 4 colours we added on from the 4 strands, and then the stripe of the silver from the other 4 strands that we added. So that's how we're getting on so far. I'll continue to bead these, keep adding my beads on, wrapping my bobbins back round again, and I'll bead this until this is finished. So I've taken all my bobbins off now, ready to just put my last bead in place. So pop it down and put the cord up as you would be. Okay, we're good to go. So here's the finished piece on the disc still. So we now need to braid a section with no beads on, ready to put the end cap on. So we continue our braiding process, top down, bottom up. So it's top right down and bottom left up. And then we carry on braiding. Now we do this for a further 5mm or so. So this is the same as the beginning bit. Try not to over pull it as I have just then. If you do, just pull it the opposite way. What I sometimes do is as I take it down, I hold that other cord, and that just stops you over pulling it. So if you do find that happens, it's worth doing. So it is very, very important to keep a disc that is just for your S-lon, and that will keep it nice and tight within your braid. So we're nearly good to go. We're just braiding that end section. So we will then tie this off and be ready to glue on our end cap. So we've finished our braid. We've done our extra 5mm, and we're ready to add our end caps on now. So you take it all off the disc. Now it shouldn't unravel too far, but I tend to just roughly keep hold of it. You could tie a knot if you wish, just to secure them while you do your braiding for the end cap. We're going to cut all this off, so it won't matter how the knot looks. So there's our end bit ready to go. Now we need to do our binding around the end here. Now what you need to do with your end cap is work out the length of the end cap, and then put your binding just below where you'll need to cut it, so it will fit within that space of the end cap. They all do vary, so these are about 5mm in width and probably about 6 or 7 long. So I will bind somewhere there, and I will then cut that off the other side. So to bind it, you take a surplus piece. This is actually beading thread, but it can be any cotton, and you tie a knot. There. Tie a second knot on top of it. gets a little bit fiddly with this thread, but just take your time, get your knots in place. There. Once those two are in, then you wind this round the thread. So these need to be just out the way, and you're winding this around here. Just really a few times. It's purely to stop it unraveling when you cut it off. So I don't want those in my way, so I'll get them there. Once I've got it round again, so I've got my binding on there, then I will tie this off again. It just looks like there's a whole load of cords going on there at the moment, but you'll see when I cut this off how it works. I'll do a second one on top of that just to secure it, and then I'll be able to show you the binding on there. You can of course refer to my book, A Beginner's Guide to Kumihimo, where there's some step-by-step photos which can be quite useful because they show all this in much more detail. So if I show you that there, so that's the binding around the end of that cord. So it's a knot wrapped around a few times and then tied another knot. Now what we next need to do is to cut that off. So what I do before I cut anything though is prepare the glue in the end cap. So this is E6000 Plus, which is the new non-smelling, well not non-smelling but low smelling glue. So I'm popping about a quarter of a capful in the end there. You can barely see it, and then I tend to scrape it off onto the edge of the cap in there. Then I'll get the other one prepared as well. Don't leave it tipped on its side for too long because it will tip out. Into there and scrape that off again. So that's ready to go. Now, what I do, so they're ready to glue on. You take out the surplus piece of cord that you put in at the beginning, which you'll see if you didn't see that part of it. I'm just going to use the scissors to unpick it, not cut it, but unpick. You'll see that on the first video I did, how I start it with the surplus piece of cord. And then that pulls out, and that leaves that end ready to glue in there. So, doesn't matter which end goes on which side, pop that on. Give that a little turn, just to coat it all the way round. Oh, managed to pull it off my finger again. So when that's there and just you leave it to dry, which you'll need to leave it overnight, get it into position and that will just dry in position for you. Then we go to this other end where we will need to cut this off. So we need to hold on to the end, cut it off there and have the end cap ready to glue straight on. So when I cut it, I do also tend to hold it just in case it still unravels and you cut a little bit near to the thread. Pop that in there. Again, give it a good turn. Now this end, obviously, if you've caught your binding or anything by accident, that could be just a loose end of cord. So that is now ready to just sort of sit and dry overnight. I hope you enjoyed this video on the beaded Kumihimo. Further projects can be found in my book, which will develop you through from your basic beaded to some of the patterned beaded projects that you can do and some of the other warp braids that are available on your Kumihimo projects. And keep tuned in for further inspirational videos. Take care, bye bye.